at $490,000, and still on the right side, and down it goes, where you've called it at $490,000. Sold for $490,000. Thank you, Rip. Thank you all.
We've all got that one weird old item lying around the house, right? Most of the time it's worthless. But for the incredibly lucky people in this video, that ordinary antique turned out to be a jackpot. Welcome back. Today we're counting down the most incredible appraisals on Antiques Roadshow that completely shocked the owners. We'll trace each item's story from how it was found for pocket change to the thrilling moment the expert reveals its true, eye-watering value. Get ready, because these insane valuations prove that real treasure is often hiding right under our noses. A book signed by Albert Einstein would already be enough to excite most collectors. Yet during this appraisal, it wasn't the signed book that impressed the appraiser the most. Instead, it was an old family photo album. Rather than showing Einstein delivering lectures or standing before a blackboard, the photographs captured him enjoying everyday life during a stay in Bermuda. Those rare, relaxed moments became the beginning of a remarkable story.
My husband's grandparents left Germany in the 30s, and they went to Bermuda, and apparently so did Albert Einstein. There were very few people on the island who spoke German, so they would keep company often.
They later reunited in New Jersey, where Einstein signed another photograph for the family. What makes this collection so compelling is not simply the autograph, but the complete story preserved through both the photographs and the signed memorabilia.
He's here in these white, lovely boat pants on this tiny boat, and I just think there's such wonderful pictures of Einstein. They just capture him in a rare moment.
According to the appraiser, these photographs capture Einstein in an unusually candid moment, far removed from the familiar public image of the world-famous scientist. Relaxing aboard a small boat, he appears in an entirely different setting from the one history usually remembers.
So here is the inscription to your grandparents, signed and dated 1935.
It says, "To Mr. and Mrs. Steinadler, with friendliest greetings, Albert Einstein."
The inscription, addressed by name and dated 1935, gives the book far greater significance than an ordinary autograph. Although the book no longer has its original dust jacket, its direct family connection preserves much of its appeal. Even so, the candid photographs of Einstein's private life proved to be the most valuable part of the collection.
The book we would estimate at $2,000 to $3,000 at auction. And the photographs we would estimate at $3,000 to $5,000 at auction.
Oh, great.
From a family photo album and a treasured inscribed book, this collection has become a remarkable group of Einstein memorabilia, preserving both historical significance and rare glimpses into the everyday life of one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. The next case begins with a ring that looks like it came straight out of a secret story. It does not have a large gemstone at the center. It does not look like the classic jewelry pieces most people are used to seeing. Instead, it has a strange appearance, almost like a tiny creature hiding something. And for years, the family truly believed there was a mysterious story behind this ring. But on Antiques Roadshow, sometimes the legend is only the beginning. The more important question is what truth is actually hidden underneath that story.
My grandmother saw it in a jewelry store window in San Francisco in the early 1920s or before, and she was quite taken with it and she bought it. And she called it a poison dart ring, but apparently there are no darts involved.
How did she come to the idea that it's a poison dart ring?
It has a little hole in it through which...
The story of a poison dart ring immediately makes this piece fascinating. It sounds like the kind of secret ring that could appear in an old royal mystery. But the expert quickly confirms one thing: there are no hidden darts inside. However, once that layer of legend is removed, the ring reveals another kind of value. This is a piece of Renaissance Revival jewelry, not an actual Renaissance-era ring, but a creation designed to capture the spirit of that period. During the late 19th century, many craftsmen began looking back to the past for inspiration, using historic imagery, symbolic creatures, and traditional techniques to create highly artistic objects. And this ring clearly represents that idea. It is made from 18-karat gold and shaped like a salamander or a small creature, making it feel more like an object of curiosity than an ordinary ring. The rose-cut diamonds, table-cut diamonds, and enamel details all add to the antique feeling that the maker wanted to recreate. Even more interesting, the ring can actually open. Compartment rings like this were not necessarily made to hold poison. They could be used to keep small objects with personal meaning. But that hidden space is exactly what created its mystery and allowed people's imagination to continue for generations. So the value of this ring is not only about gold or diamonds. It comes from the unusual design, the craftsmanship, the family story, and a sense of mystery that very few pieces of jewelry can carry.
We feel that at auction, this ring would take an estimate in the range of $5,000 to $7,000.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's not for sale.
$5,000 to $7,000. Not for an actual poison dart ring, but for a piece carrying design history, craftsmanship, and a story memorable enough to survive through time. The response, "It's not for sale," also shows that this ring means far more than its appraisal value. The family legend may not have been completely accurate, but it kept this object alive through generations. And in the end, the truth behind it was still special in a different way. The ring did not need to hide something dangerous to become valuable. Because sometimes in the world of antiques, the most fascinating part is not whether every detail of a legend is true. It is what that legend helps us discover. Appeared to be a few ordinary secondhand books turned out to be an extraordinary piece of American literary history. Car boot sales are hardly the places where anyone expects to discover valuable books. Yet, from dusty cardboard boxes, one collector quietly assembled an Ian Fleming collection that would surprise even the appraiser. The most unexpected part? It all began simply because he liked the cover artwork.
So you're telling me you got all these from car boot sales?
Except for that one.
Oh, amazing. Why do you like Ian Fleming?
Well, I don't know. The artwork on the books, it was when I started collecting the paperbacks. I just found the artwork interesting.
Those striking paperback covers sparked a deeper interest in Ian Fleming, leading him to seek out first editions. In the world of rare books, however, age alone means very little. Value depends on the edition, the condition, and especially whether the original dust jacket has survived. But the collection's first surprise wasn't hidden inside a James Bond novel at all.
Ian Fleming liked to go to the West Indies, so there was a link, and Ian Fleming had read James Bond's book. In a way, what he did was he just grabbed his name and he used it.
Few people realize that James Bond was originally the name of an American ornithologist. Fleming borrowed that name for the secret agent who would become a global icon. As a result, the Bird Guide has become a collectible in its own right because of its direct connection to the birth of 007. Even so, the greatest value of this collection still came from the remarkably well-preserved first editions.
The unusual thing about the whole collection is that most of them are in just such beautiful condition.
Picking up at car boot sales, they tend to put them in cardboard boxes on damp ground, and the damp comes through like there's one or two.
Books found at car boot sales are often damaged by damp or missing their dust jackets, making high-quality examples extremely rare. As the appraiser added up the collection, one title still stood above all the others: Casino Royale, the novel that introduced James Bond to the world.
And if I said to you that recently it's been fetching between £5,000 and £7,000 at auction,
Never.
and you say you bought it at a boot sale,
Yeah.
A book purchased for less than £1 could now bring £5,000 to £7,000 at auction. Its value comes not only from Ian Fleming's name, but from being the first edition of Casino Royale, the book that launched the entire James Bond series, combined with its outstanding condition after decades of survival. What began as a fascination with book cover art ultimately became one of the most impressive James Bond collections featured on the program. A garage sale is usually the last place anyone expects to find a literary treasure. But every now and then, a single handwritten inscription can turn a forgotten book into something collectors are willing to pay thousands of dollars for. That's exactly what happened with this remarkable collection.
I always go to yard sales and garage sales, and I went to one in New York where I'm originally from, and I found the books and I seen they were signed.
And how much did you pay for them?
$1 a piece.
At just $1 each, the books looked like an unbelievable bargain, but it wasn't the signatures alone that caught the appraiser's attention. The seller explained that the books had belonged to Gene Shaw, a friend of Langston Hughes. If that story could be confirmed, the collection would become far more significant than anyone first imagined. There was just one more detail that needed to be examined.
This is a Langston Hughes first edition of the Big C. It's lacking its dust jacket, which makes it somewhat less valuable.
I have it.
You have the dust jacket?
Yes, that one is very good. This one was like a little more tattered.
For rare books, a first edition is always desirable, but an original dust jacket can make an enormous difference in value. The owner had wisely kept the worn jacket, allowing the collection to retain even more of its appeal to collectors. But the biggest surprise was still waiting inside the books.
Simple Takes a Wife is not only signed by the famous author, but it's inscribed. These simple tales for Gene Howard, sincerely simple, not Howard, but Shaw. Langston Hughes.
Rather than simply signing his name, Langston Hughes wrote warm, humorous personal inscriptions to Gene Shaw. That single detail transformed these volumes into association copies, books connected to a genuine friendship between the author and the recipient. As one of the leading figures of the Harlem Renaissance, Hughes remains highly sought after by collectors. When first editions are combined with personal inscriptions and clear provenance, their value rises far beyond that of an ordinary signed copy.
In my opinion, at retail, your one signed and your two inscribed Langston Hughes first editions are worth at retail between $8,000 to $10,000.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's amazing. Really amazing.
Purchased for a total of just $3, the collection was ultimately valued at $8,000 to $10,000. That remarkable estimate reflects far more than Langston Hughes's fame. It comes from the personal inscriptions, the documented provenance, and the story of a real friendship preserved across the pages. John Ray, Alice in Wonderland, oil painting. Could a painting rescued from a trash pile really turn out to be a work of art worth thousands of dollars? It sounds almost impossible, yet that is exactly where this story begins. One man happened to notice the painting beside an old abandoned barn and decided to take it home simply because he felt it deserved a second chance. What he rescued from that pile of discarded belongings turned out to be far more valuable than anyone in the family had ever imagined.
Dad saw this old barn or dilapidated building of some sort that had a trash pile, and he could see this painting in the trash pile. Dad was an artist, so he thought it was interesting, and he stopped and picked this up, put it in the car, and they went on about their road trip, and it stayed in the closet the whole time I was a kid.
For years, the painting simply sat in a closet as an old family keepsake. Everything changed when the appraiser noticed the signature in the corner. It belonged to John Ray, an American illustrator well known for his work on books and magazines. Even more intriguing, Ray had a remarkable connection to the world of Alice.
Well, it's signed on here, John Ray. John Ray was born in 1882. He studied in New York at the Art Students League under a well-known American illustrator named Howard Pyle. And he contributed illustrative work to about 50 books and did a lot of work for magazines as well.
Wow, I didn't know that.
John Ray not only illustrated numerous books, but also created his own story, inspired by Alice in Wonderland. That connection made this painting far more significant than an ordinary illustration. But there was still one more detail that fascinated the appraiser.
He also wrote and illustrated children's books, and he did write a book about Alice. He seemed to be somewhat obsessed with Alice, I think.
The painting reveals Ray's own imaginative interpretation of Alice's world, blending fine art and illustration into a style that was uniquely his. At last, the painting that had once been left beside a trash pile received the recognition its family had never expected.
I think in a retail setting, the asking price might be around $10,000.
Wow.
Not bad for something rescued from the trash.
Not bad for the trash, no. Yeah.
From a discarded painting to one of the memorable discoveries on Antiques Roadshow, John Ray's Alice in Wonderland became a true hidden treasure. Its value lies not only in its estimated price of around $10,000, but also in the remarkable journey of a work once dismissed as trash before being recognized as a genuine piece of American illustration history. Not every handwritten manuscript by a famous author carries exceptional historical importance. But this single sheet may preserve the moment when Oscar Wilde revisited one of his own poems only about a year before his death. That was why the appraisers quickly realized they were looking at something far rarer than an ordinary literary manuscript.
I worked for a woman when I was in college, taking care of show dogs that she had. She approached me one day and she said, "I know you're an English major, you'd like this," and she handed it to me.
The owner received the manuscript as a gift while studying English literature in college. At the time, no one imagined that a few handwritten pages could be connected to one of the greatest figures in English literature. Original autograph manuscripts by Oscar Wilde are highly prized because they preserve the author's own handwriting and provide a direct record of his creative work.
Her father-in-law was the man referred to here as for Christian.
So it's inscribed at the bottom here, for Christian. And as we understand, it was Christian Gauss who received the poem.
The inscription for Christian allowed the appraisers to trace the manuscript's provenance. The recipient is believed to have been Christian Gauss, who later became a distinguished professor at Princeton University. More importantly, the manuscript appears to date from the final period of Wilde's life, after he left England and lived in exile in Paris. Since so few documents from those years have survived, every handwritten piece from that period carries remarkable historical significance.
But I discovered the text of the poem is actually quite a well-known and very famous poem by Wilde called The New Remorse, which he wrote in 1891 for his lover, Lord Alfred Douglas.
The most important discovery was that the manuscript was actually Wilde's famous poem The New Remorse, but rewritten under the title Ideal Love, a Sonnet. To literary scholars, that change may reflect how Wilde viewed the same work after the events that transformed the course of his life.
I think this example is beautiful. I think it's a wonderful shape, and given its historic importance near the end of his life, I would put an auction estimate conservatively of $10,000 to $15,000 today.
Great.
With an auction estimate of $10,000 to $15,000, the manuscript's value extends far beyond Oscar Wilde's handwriting alone. It preserves a rare moment from the final chapter of his life, when one of England's greatest writers appears to have reinterpreted his own work through a new perspective. If any case proves that a treasure can begin with almost nothing, it is this one. Not $200, not even $20, but just $2.50. A small weekly sacrifice, the kind most people would forget, quietly became the beginning of a family treasure that no one saw coming.
When I was in high school, I would every week save my lunch money, and on Fridays, I'd buy a new Tennessee Pearl for about $2.50. No, it was $2.50.
But the story gets even stranger. Her grandfather once lived near a creek bed where people could still find pearls in the water. They were so familiar that children did not even treat them like gems. They flipped them across the creek as if they were marbles.
And they used to go over there and find them and flip and see who could flip them the furthest across to get them across the creek bed.
The pearls, not the shells.
The pearls. It treated them just like they were marbles.
What once sat under a counter and was once thrown like marbles had become much rarer. But to the owner, they were never just pearls. One was a high school graduation gift from her parents. Another had been removed and sewn into the top of her daughter's wedding dress.
That one is my high school graduation from my parents. Mother and Daddy gave me that. When my daughter Maxie got married, we took it off and sewed it in the top of her wedding dress in the V.
Then the appraiser began turning those memories into numbers. The pearls she once bought for $2.50 could now bring $300 to $400 each. The necklace alone added up to $11,200. One rosé pearl could be worth $2,000 and another around $1,500. Placed together, this was no longer just a childhood box of pearls, it was a collection.
These pearls today could go for $300 and $400 each. You add up the whole necklace and there's $1,200. But when you look at the collection, there's $6,500 here, at auction for something like this.
I have a daughter and a granddaughter. They're going to stay right there.
Right.
Her answer said everything. $16,500 was a serious number, but to her, this pearl collection had carried too many memories to be treated only as merchandise. Lunch money, a cigar box, a creek bed, and even her daughter's wedding dress. Sometimes, Roadshow is not only valuing an object, it is valuing a lifetime lived with it and passed through a family. 3 old sheets of paper forgotten in a storage shed had almost reached the end of their journey as nothing more than discarded documents. They were buried among old theater materials, unframed, unprotected, and with no obvious reason for anyone to keep them. Yet one visitor decided to take them home. That simple decision uncovered a story reaching back to the earliest days of American comic art.
As I understand it, Winsor McCay was perhaps the most important comic strip artist of his time being the first few decades of the 20th century.
Quite early, right, absolutely. So we've got a hand-done illustration here, which is really wonderful.
What immediately excited the appraiser was that these were not ordinary newspaper pages, but original pen and ink drawings created by Winsor McCay himself. Original comic art is far more desirable than printed copies because it preserves the artist's actual hand and the creative process behind every page. Even more remarkably, all 3 illustrations came from Little Nemo in Slumberland, McCay's most celebrated comic strip.
And it's from Little Nemo in Slumberland, which is probably thought to be his most famous strip.
Right. Well, other than the comic strip, I know that he was an important pioneer in the development of animated films.
Beyond transforming the history of comic strips, Winsor McCay also helped lay the foundation for modern animation with Gertie the Dinosaur. That legacy has made his original artwork highly sought after by collectors. These drawings still carried McCay's signature, the original New York Herald publication label, and even a dedication to entertainer Billy B. Van. Together with the location where they were discovered, those details created an exceptionally convincing provenance.
And one day I was poking around a storage shed in the barn, and I found these pieces, not framed, they were unprotected, loose leaf, in a pile of other materials that included Billy B. Van's old vaudeville arrangements.
So he had left them there?
He had left them there to rot. I went to the owner of the theater. I said, I found something I would like to purchase from you. I think it might be fairly valuable.
The owner walked away with all 3 drawings without paying a single dollar. That was almost impossible to believe, because a little moisture, accidental damage, or a routine cleanup could easily have destroyed them forever. In recent years, original comic art has become increasingly collectible, with each page serving as both a unique artwork and a surviving piece of publishing history. All that remained was the final appraisal.
And I would estimate your 3 to bring somewhere in the range of $25,000 to $35,000.
That's a nice piece of change, Gary.
Sometimes, the greatest treasures are not waiting in museums or galleries. They are quietly hidden among forgotten stacks of old paper, waiting for someone to recognize what everyone else overlooked. Many old family belongings are kept because they're beautiful or valuable. These WRANGLER jeans survived for nearly 50 years for a much funnier reason. Almost no one in the family could fit into them. Instead of becoming everyday clothing, they turned into a running family joke at bridal showers, where every new family member was challenged to see if they could button them up. No one realized that this tradition would also preserve the jeans in remarkably original condition.
These our family has affectionately called the Adam and Eve pants. This was in one of the care packets. And her motto was always, I have 12 grandchildren, somebody can wear them. Well, nobody could fit into them. So we just kind of kept them.
The jeans remained in the family for generations and were hardly ever worn. What immediately caught the appraiser's attention wasn't the playful artwork covering the denim, but their exceptional condition. The original tag from the 1960s was still attached, the colors remained vibrant, and there were almost no signs of wear. Those details are far rarer today than the jeans themselves.
Whenever a female would marry into the family, and even the extended family, he would wrap these up as a gag gift at her bridal shower to see if she could actually fit into them.
According to the appraiser, these were WRANGLER jeans from the late 1960s, decorated in the colorful psychedelic style that defined the era. The hand-drawn artwork, combined with one of America's best-known denim brands, made them a fascinating example of vintage fashion. More importantly, they had never been worn and still carried their original tag, a condition collectors call dead stock.
And they've never been worn before. No, they still have the original tag from the 60s.
In the vintage clothing market, dead stock pieces are highly prized because most garments from that era have been worn, altered, or washed over the years. Ironically, the fact that no one could comfortably wear these jeans preserved everything collectors hope to find. And that ultimately led to a value the family never expected.
I don't know.
They are incredibly rare. I believe that if you were going to have to replace them, you'd spend $400 to $500 to replace them.
Sometimes a family joke that lasted for decades becomes exactly the kind of vintage treasure collectors dream of finding.
It was my great-grandfather's.
So how long ago would that be?
Maybe 1910, but we don't really know when he would have had it, but we think maybe around that date. And it's just been passed down through the family, and it now belongs to my brother.
For many years, this ring was simply seen as a family piece passed down through generations. Without many documents or confirmed details, the family only knew about it through old stories. But in the world of antique jewelry, a small clue about origin can sometimes reveal the true value of a stone. Because diamonds are not only judged by appearance, but also by their history, age, and journey.
And do you have any idea where it originated from?
We've just been told that it's a Brazilian yellow diamond, and apart from that, we don't know a thing.
Before South African diamond mines became famous, Brazil was once one of the most important sources of diamonds in the world. That made the family story especially interesting to the expert. But to truly understand the ring's value, the most important detail was still the stone itself.
So it's very likely that this diamond did actually originate from Brazil.
And did they specifically find yellow diamonds in Brazil?
Well, they find white, yellow, all colors.
This yellow diamond carried the characteristics of an older stone, with a cut that was different from many modern diamonds today. Valuable gemstones are often preserved through generations, even when the surrounding design is changed. And when the expert estimated its true size, the ring delivered another surprise.
So I think that this stone probably weighs somewhere between 4 and 5 carats, or at least 12,000 pounds. Anything between 12 and 15,000.
An antique yellow diamond weighing between 4 and 5 carats transformed this piece into much more than an ordinary family ring. With its impressive size, long history, and special origin, the diamond was finally recognized as a treasure preserved across generations.
Now, the sight of a box like this often heralds the fact that it contains something by Fabergé. And when we open it up like this, we can see that it's certainly Russian, but not necessarily by Fabergé.
From the moment the box was opened, the expert realized this was not an ordinary diamond ring. In the world of antique jewelry, small details like a box, a signature, or the name of a maker can reveal a lot about the origin of a piece. At first, the ring brought to mind high-end Russian jewelry from the early 20th century. But the story behind it was what made the piece even more fascinating.
Well, I'm surprised you said Russian, actually, because I inherited it from my mother-in-law, and her father, I understand, bought it when the Romanian royal family had to sell all their jewels and they were no longer becoming royal and they were sent out to Romania. So I suppose I sort of thought that writing on the box was Romanian.
For many years, the family believed the ring had a special past, but they could not fully confirm the story. For jewelry connected to aristocratic families, provenance can be just as important as the materials or gemstones. The box suggested a connection to luxury Russian jewelry from the early 20th century, a period when Russian jewelers were known for pieces created for nobility and royalty. And when the expert examined it more closely, the clues on the box began to reveal more about its journey.
Well, it's certainly in Cyrillic, and actually I think what it does say is that it's retailed by a jeweler called Malkanar, and then underneath of Odessa. And I think we can be absolutely sure that this is contemporary with Fabergé, not only from the style of the box, but also from the style of the ring.
Although it was not made by Fabergé, the ring still belonged to the same era of luxurious Russian jewelry. The combination of elegant design, precious materials, and fine craftsmanship showed that this was a piece made for someone extremely wealthy. But for the owner, the most important question was whether the family story was actually true.
And I can't see much hope of buying a Russian ring like that really for much less than about 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 pounds.
Well, that's very reassuring.
Although the original owner could not be identified, the quality of the craftsmanship suggested it almost certainly belonged to someone of high status. From a family piece with a mysterious origin, the ring became a small connection to the history and world of European aristocratic jewelry. 1945. Robert Rauschenberg oil portrait. Long before Robert Rauschenberg became a giant of modern American art, he painted a simple portrait of a fellow serviceman, and that quiet moment would one day become far more important than anyone expected. But what made this piece special was not the person in the portrait, it was the person who created it.
I brought a portrait of my father by Robert Rauschenberg. My father was in the service in 1945. I became friends with Robert Rauschenberg.
The detail that changed the entire story was the moment when the painting was created. In 1945, Robert Rauschenberg had not yet become a famous name in modern American art. This was an extremely early period, when he was only beginning to explore his creative path. And that was exactly what made an ordinary family portrait become much more interesting. But for many years, the family saw it in a completely different way.
Yeah, we did. Actually, we always had two pictures on the wall, and the one was probably a $2 picture, and then this was this one, and being lime green and everything, you'd always assume the one on the right was always the more expensive one, but my dad says, no, this is signed by Robert Rauschenberg.
This is what creates some of the most surprising moments on Antiques Roadshow. A valuable object is not always lost or hidden away. Sometimes it has been there the entire time, but the true story behind it has never been discovered. But with a major artist like Rauschenberg, a signature alone is not enough. The next important step is proving the history of the artwork.
And I think these are great because they actually show, this one right here shows your father sitting while in the Navy with Robert Rauschenberg.
Yes, exactly.
The additional evidence helped directly connect the painting to the artist. In the art market, provenance can make an enormous difference, especially with works from a rare period of a famous artist's career. And when all these details came together, the true value of the portrait was finally revealed.
I would put a conservative auction estimate of $40,000 to $60,000 on it.
Holy cow, are you kidding me? I guess it was worth more than that $2 picture right next to it. Oh, amazing.
Its greatest value was not only found in the famous signature, but also in the story of an ordinary moment preserved before a young serviceman became an art legend.
This guitar was purchased by my father, I believe, in the year 1962. My dad was a Marine, and when he got out of the Marines, married my mom and moved to Minneapolis area and decided he wanted to learn how to play guitar. So he went to the Minneapolis, either Star or Tribune, and looked in the ads.
The classified.
In the classified ads.
A man leaves the Marines, starts a new life, gets married, and decides he wants to learn guitar. At first, it sounds like an ordinary family story. No famous stage, no legendary band, no historic performance attached to the instrument, just a father opening the classified ads in a local newspaper and buying a guitar because he wanted to teach himself how to play. But that simple decision brought one of the most desirable late 1950s Gibson semi-hollow guitars into his family. Because this was not just an old Gibson, it was a 1959 Gibson ES, Tres, Cinco, Cinco Mono. In the vintage Gibson world, 1959 is not just another year. It belongs to a period when Gibson was producing some of its most celebrated electric guitars, and the ES semi-hollow line was one of the company's most important ideas. Traditional hollow-body guitars had a warm, open sound, but as amplifiers became louder, feedback became a real problem. Gibson's answer was the semi-hollow design, hollow wings for resonance, with a solid center block to make the guitar more stable when amplified. The ES-355 was the more luxurious version of that idea. And this one had another important detail. It was mono. To collectors, an early mono ES-355 can be especially appealing because it feels simpler, more direct, and closer to the original sound many players want, compared with later stereo configurations. Then comes the factory Bigsby, meaning the tremolo was part of the guitar's original setup, not something added years later. But the biggest clue was hidden in the pickups. This guitar came from the PAF humbucker era, one of the most sought-after periods in vintage Gibson history. And if those pickups were double white PAFs, that small internal detail could add serious value. With the original hang tag still present, the story became even stronger. A guitar bought from the classified ads, played by a father for a lifetime, was suddenly revealed as a 1959 Gibson, with details collectors could spend years trying to find.
It's roughly around $45,000.
My father would be so incredibly pleased to find that out.
And that's if it has the double whites, which I'm assuming it probably does.
Oh my gosh, that's That's crazy. My dad would be so proud to know that.
Around $45,000 for a guitar once found in the classified ads. But the son's reaction shows that the money is not the most emotional part. The first person he thinks of is his father, the man who left the military, taught himself guitar, and played this instrument throughout his life.
It was my dad's, and he left it to me when he passed away. He bought it new, he ordered it from Fender. He liked country and western a lot, and he also liked French music. He played in the Dixie Ramblers back in 1933.
This guitar did not enter the story as a collector's piece, locked away for future value. It had been played. It had belonged to a father who loved country, western, and even French music, and in the end, he left it to his child as a very personal part of his life. At first, the guitar was believed to be a 1956 or 1957 Fender Telecaster. Even that would have made it interesting. But once the appraiser looked closer, a few details did not line up. The first clue was the black pickguard. Then came the slotted head screws on the pickguard instead of the Phillips screws more commonly seen on later examples. To most people, those might look like tiny, forgettable parts. But in vintage Fender collecting, the smallest details can unlock the biggest part of the story. And then the appraiser removed the neck. That was the turning point. On an early Fender, the neck pocket and the end of the neck can preserve direct clues from the factory itself. Once the guitar was opened, the story no longer pointed to 1956 or 1957. It went all the way back to the 8th of November, 1951. There were also the initials of Tadeo Gomez, a name that carries real weight among early Fender collectors. With one small date and one set of initials, this guitar suddenly became something far rarer, an extremely early left-handed Telecaster from the very beginning of the model's history. That year matters. In 1951, Fender had just moved through the broadcaster and no-caster period toward the Telecaster name known around the world. And in a period that early, a left-handed version was even more unusual. The guitar was not perfect. It had cracks, touch-up work, a missing original case, and a missing switch tip. But the most important parts of the story were still there. It had age. It had history. And more importantly, it carried the marks of someone who had truly played it for nearly a lifetime.
Given the condition, missing its case, I'd value this at $30,000 to $35,000.
Wow. $30,000 to $35,000 for a guitar that was no longer perfect. And the most beautiful part is that it did not live a silent life. It was played, kept, passed down, and finally brought to Antiques Roadshow as a witness to nearly a century of music in the hands of a father who truly loved it. One of the most satisfying moments on Antiques Roadshow is when someone walks in with an object and has absolutely no idea what they're really holding. That is exactly how this story begins. The owner believed he had brought in nothing more than a Civil War cartridge box. An interesting military relic, but certainly not an exceptionally rare one. At least that was what he had always believed.
What I believe is a Civil War cartridge pouch.
Would you be surprised if I told you it's a little earlier than Civil War?
Yeah, I would be.
With just one question, the entire story changed. Not the Civil War. Something almost a century older. And moments later, the truth was revealed.
That's because this is an original Revolutionary War soldier's cartridge box.
No kidding.
And it's not 43rd New York, and it's not 43rd Massachusetts.
Suddenly, the object on the table was no longer an ordinary military artifact. It had become a surviving relic from the American Revolutionary War. According to the expert, this cartridge box may even have been present at famous battles such as Lexington and Bunker Hill. If that's true, it witnessed some of the earliest chapters in the history of the United States.
It had, to this point, the only known non-excavated example of that plate. It's got the original buff leather shoulder sling. It's got the original closure tab, still present. It's got the original wooden block on the inside of it.
But its historical importance was only part of the story. What truly excited the expert was its remarkable condition. Nearly every major component had survived intact after almost 250 years. That is extraordinarily rare for any military artifact from this period.
Finding all of those things together is like lining up all of those numbers on a lottery ticket.
To a collector, discovering an artifact like this is almost the equivalent of winning the lottery. And by now, everyone knew its value would be nothing like that of an ordinary Civil War cartridge box.
If this was a Civil War cartridge box, with the sling and everything, you're talking around $1,000, maybe $1,500 if it's really pretty. This one, on today's market, would retail for between $20,000 and $25,000. I think without a doubt, it would bring at least 50, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it didn't bring twice that.
What the owner believed was a $1,000 military relic suddenly became an artifact worth at least $50,000, with the potential to bring twice that amount. That's the kind of twist that makes Antiques Roadshow so compelling. Because sometimes the greatest value of a historical object isn't determined by how it looks, but by the exact moment in history it managed to survive. Henry SIDDONS' MOWBRAY painting. Could a painting that was once just a familiar image in someone's bedroom actually be an important part of American art history? For the owner, this was not something purchased as an investment or a collector's item. It was a family artwork, created by his own grandfather and connected to many personal memories. But when it appeared on Antiques Roadshow, the story behind the artist was what made this painting truly special.
Tim, your grandfather was a really interesting artist, but this is just such a luscious painting. Henry SIDDONS MOWBRAY was born in actually Alexandria, Egypt, in 1858, studied in Paris, and died in 1928. You have an idea of when this was painted and what series it's from, don't you?
I think it was painted around 1895.
The period when this painting was created turned out to be an important detail. In the late 19th century, many American artists were strongly influenced by classical European art, using symbolic figures to express deeper ideas. And Henry SIDDONS MOWBRAY was one of the artists connected to this remarkable creative period. But that was only the beginning of what made this family painting stand out.
Well, apparently your grandmother wrote that your grandfather was very much influenced by classical themes, with themes of the American Renaissance, and with figures of muses and virtues. And these lovely allegorical figures are terrific.
Although MOWBRAY was known for his large decorative projects and murals, smaller paintings like this still revealed his technique and unique artistic style. But the value of the piece was not only about its beauty, the bigger story came from MOWBRAY's place in an important chapter of American art history. And the next details showed just how connected he was to that world.
What's interesting to me, you mentioned the murals, is that he was great friends with Augustus St. Gaudens and with the architectural firm of Stanford White, McKim, Mead and White.
These connections showed that MOWBRAY was part of a network of artists who helped shape the visual style of America in the late 19th century. So this was not only a family keepsake, it represented an important chapter in the artist's career. And finally, the owner discovered the true value of the painting he had known for years.
Given that, at auction, I would estimate it at between $50,000 and $75,000.
Wow. I could never sell it, unfortunately. It would stay in the family.
The appraisal revealed an entirely new side of the painting, but for the owner, its greatest meaning was still the family story behind it. From a piece he saw every day when he was young, the Henry SIDDONS MOWBRAY painting became proof that sometimes the most valuable treasures have been right in front of us all along. The PETRUS Van Schendel painting.
But I never expected that we'd actually get brought in a museum quality picture. But that's what you brought in.
From the moment he saw it, the expert knew this was no ordinary painting. The scene depicts a bustling nighttime market illuminated by candlelight. Light spills across the face of a vendor, glimmers off metal surfaces, and guides the viewer through a crowd of figures moving through the darkness. In the distance, moonlight settles softly over rooftops and ships' masts. What impressed the expert most was the artist's extraordinary command of light.
Just look at the way he has handled the whole light in this market scene. The way the light comes off the candle and illuminates her face. It's the most brilliant piece of work. And you've got the source of light here, then you've got another candle light here.
The owner explained that the painting had been passed down through the family. Her father-in-law had worked in a fish market as a boy, which may explain why he felt such a connection to the subject. Then the expert pointed to the signature.
And then to reveal all down at the bottom.
Yes.
P. van Schendel.
Yes.
Petrus van Schendel. A Dutch painter, but he worked in Belgium and Holland.
The signature belonged to Petrus van Schendel, a Dutch painter renowned for his dramatic scenes illuminated by candles and moonlight.
He absolutely specialized in these moonlit, candlelit scenes. It was his trademark, if you like. It was what he was absolutely brilliant at. And he was working in the middle of the 19th century, between about 1830 and 1870 was when he was really in his prime. Painted in oil on this very nice bit of wood. Well, just quality is the word for it. It is by probably the leading candlelight painter of the 19th century.
Throughout his career, Van Schendel devoted himself to mastering these effects, becoming one of the most respected painters of artificial light in 19th century Europe. The quality of this example left a particularly strong impression on the expert.
Probably make between 70 and 90,000 pounds.
The valuation alone was enough to leave the owner stunned, but the expert believed it deserved even greater protection.
So you should probably insure it for 100,000 pounds.
Wow. Thank you.
Almost like winning the lottery. Almost. 100,000 pounds for insurance.
It belonged to my great-great-grandmother. I don't think it was an engagement ring because I think back in those days, and she died in 1912, that they weren't given engagement rings.
So what we have here is a platinum, diamond, and sapphire ring. I would characterize it to be from the Edwardian period.
When this ring appeared on Antiques Roadshow, it was first seen simply as a piece of family jewelry passed down through generations. But after taking a closer look, the expert quickly realized this was not just an ordinary antique ring. It was a piece from the Edwardian period, an era famous for elegant jewelry designs in the early 20th century, when platinum was used to create delicate structures strong enough to hold precious gemstones. From the detailed craftsmanship to the surrounding diamonds, every element showed the quality of the piece. But the detail that truly caught the expert's attention was at the center.
The featured aspect of this ring is, of course, the sapphire. And when I saw that sapphire, my eyes lit up.
In the world of gemstones, not every sapphire carries the same value. Beyond size and beauty, a stone's origin can create an enormous difference. And this sapphire had signs that reminded the expert of one of the most sought-after sapphires in the world.
Cashmere sapphires are considered to be the most beautiful, perfect, standard sapphire that you could have in a piece of jewelry. In 1880, there was a landslide in the Kashmir region of India, and that landslide revealed sapphire deposits. The sapphires that were coming out of this area were the most beautiful in their color and their depth and their quality.
Kashmir sapphires are famous for their unique blue color and extreme rarity because the supply from this region existed for only a very limited period. Although further testing would be needed for absolute confirmation, the possibility that this stone came from Kashmir was enough to turn the family ring into a piece collectors would desire. Then came the appraisal that completely surprised its owner.
And if it is indeed a Kashmir sapphire, which I feel pretty confident it is, at auction I think we're looking at somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A ring once considered only a family keepsake turned out to possibly contain one of the rarest sapphires in the world, with a value far beyond anything its owner ever expected. Some objects seem like pirate treasure when you're a child. Years later, that same object can end up on Antique Roadshow with a valuation reaching $150,000. That's exactly what happened with this cuff.
Well, my mother gave it to me as a wedding present about 20 years ago. And before that, it had been a gift to my mother from her great-aunt Helen Hayes.
Well, why don't you read how she...
So my mother's name is Ani, and she says, "Darling Ani, your Uncle Charlie picked this as a gift from me years ago. I want you to have it, sort of as a gift of love from both of us. devotedly, Aunt Helen.
The story was already compelling because of the note that accompanied it. But for years, the owner had little idea what she actually possessed. Some people suggested it was merely costume jewelry. One person even offered her $1,000 after seeing a photograph. Fortunately, she turned the offer down.
I had a friend who sort of intimated that it was costume jewelry and stones were glass. And then I showed someone a photograph of it, and they said, well, you know, those stones, I think they're real, and I'll give you $1,000 for it. And I said, it's a family heirloom. I don't think I'd sell it for $1,000.
As the research began, the appraiser connected the design to two legendary names in fashion history: Verdura, Chanel, and the famous Maltese cross cuffs that appeared in iconic portraits of Coco Chanel herself.
One of the first pieces he made for her was a pair of Maltese cross bracelets that looked just like this. And she wore them, one on each wrist, and there are a lot of very famous portraits of Coco Chanel wearing these Verdura-designed cuffs.
But that was only half the story. Authentic Chanel cuffs from this period are already incredibly rare. This example carried an even bigger surprise. The stones were not imitation gems.
The costume pieces from the 1930s are so rare. When they do come up for auction, the costume jewelry collectors go crazy for them. In 2016, a Verdura for Chanel bracelet that was enamel, a different design, not the iconic Maltese cross, with all faux stones, and it sold for $100,000.
Diamonds, sapphires, rubies, aquamarines, emeralds, and gold were all incorporated into a single cuff. Combined with its provenance through Helen Hayes, it became a piece that stood far outside the ordinary.
To say that this is a rare piece is an understatement. Being as rare as it is from the 1930s and having all real stones, we think a very conservative auction estimate would be at least $100,000 to $150,000.
Goodness. Oh my word.
From a piece once mistaken for costume jewelry and offered only $1,000, this cuff was finally restored to its proper place in history. A genuine treasure carrying the names of Helen Hayes, Chanel, and Verdura. H.F. Farney watercolor and gouache painting. Could a painting once valued at only a few $100s as a simple print actually be an original artwork worth hundreds of thousands? For years, this was just a familiar family piece, kept more for its personal memories than its potential artistic value. But one tiny detail trapped inside the frame made the owner wonder if the real story behind it was completely different.
So this is a painting that I was given when my grandmother passed away. It always hung right above her bed. Her dad, I'm guessing, would have given it to her after she spent the summer at a dude ranch when she was 19 in like the 40s. Not sure if it's a print or a painting, but when I got it, there was a mosquito underneath the glass. So I took it out to the front yard and I opened it up to get the mosquito out so I could take it with me to college. And then it kind of scared me a little.
Opening the frame just to remove a mosquito unexpectedly became the moment that changed everything. Because in the art world, the difference between a decorative copy and an original work can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the biggest surprise was that this painting had already been examined before, and its true value was still overlooked.
Okay, and have you had it appraised before? Do you know if she had it appraised?
It was appraised in like a general house appraisal twice. In 1998, it was appraised as a print at $200, and in 2004, it was appraised at $250.
Okay.
Everything began to change when the expert looked closer at the artist behind the piece. This was no longer just an old family painting. It was connected to one of the important artists of the American West.
So that's the artist. It's Henry Francois Farney. He was born in France. He came to Pennsylvania when he was about 6 years old.
After arriving in Pennsylvania, Farney's connection with the Seneca people helped shape his lifelong interest in indigenous communities. That influence became a defining part of his career, as Farney's paintings captured not only scenes of the American West, but also the people, clothing, daily life, and cultures he carefully studied. With this painting, the artist's reputation, the subject matter, and the quality of the work transformed something once mistaken for a simple print into a completely different discovery.
So if we were going to put this in an auction today, I would suggest an estimate of $200,000 to $300,000.
so I can't hang it up. Oh my God. That's so much. I don't even know what to say.
From a painting once believed to be worth only $200, Farney's work became an unforgettable Antiques Roadshow discovery. The British Army Silver Centerpiece.
It was presented to the 10th Hussars, Prince of Wales's own, by King George IV on his accession to the throne.
This centerpiece once stood in the officers' mess of the King's Royal Hussars and came with a remarkable connection to both the British Army and the monarchy. That history alone would have made it an important object, but the appraisal took an unexpected turn when the expert began examining the maker's mark.
We've actually got a maker's mark appearing here, and the maker's mark there is PR. Now that is not Paul Storr's mark.
For years, it had been believed that the piece was made by Paul Storr, one of Britain's most celebrated silversmiths. Yet the mark stamped into the silver told a different story.
Rundle, Bridge and Rundle, the royal goldsmiths. The maker's mark there is that of Philip Rundell. I would suggest the greatest firm that there has ever been in the history of silver.
Far from reducing its importance, that discovery linked the centerpiece to an even more influential name. Rundell. Bridge and Rundell served as royal goldsmiths and employed many of the finest craftsmen of the Regency era. The piece itself was made of silver gilt, silver covered with a layer of gold, and was designed less as a practical object and more as a statement of prestige and power. Most importantly, it was unique. Commissioned by a king. Presented to one of Britain's most distinguished cavalry regiments. Those details placed it in a category few antiques could ever reach.
And its last valuation, we believe about 10 years ago, had it in the area of £750,000.
Right, 750,000. I would go along with that. It is, after all, a unique piece, commissioned by the king for presentation to one of the greatest of all the regiments.
£750,000 for a piece of silver. But for collectors, its true value lies in something much rarer, a one-of-a-kind object that connects the British monarchy, the military, and more than 2 centuries of history. 1955 Erna Rosenstein, oil painting. Not every painting is meant to impress with beauty alone. Some leave a lasting impression because every brushstroke carries the weight of a real human story. At first glance, this painting feels unsettling. Its distorted forms, dark atmosphere, and haunting imagery seem almost dreamlike. But the deeper the experts looked, the more they realized this wasn't simply a work of art. It was the story of someone who survived one of history's darkest chapters.
I brought an Erna Rosenstein painting. I know that Erna Rosenstein was a Holocaust survivor. It's painted in 1955. I've had it for about 37 years. It was from an auction house where they were auctioning stuff for a charity.
Erna Rosenstein became one of the leading figures of modern Polish art, but before she was known as an artist, she was a Holocaust survivor. The war tore her family apart, forcing her to live under false identities simply to stay alive. Those experiences never left her. After the war, she returned to painting, transforming memories of fear, loss, and survival into deeply personal works that were unlike anything else being created at the time.
Her mother and father were murdered
Right.
in a forest. She was there. She was wounded in the whole experience, but she did escape. And she spent the next several years living under false identities and moving around trying to just survive the war.
That's why Rosenstein's paintings feel both surreal and deeply emotional. The strange imagery isn't simply imagination. It reflects memories she carried with her for the rest of her life. Every canvas became more than a painting. It became a powerful piece of history.
She did really spend the rest of her career using those experiences in her art. And we see some of that in this painting.
I remember they would say they were going to get showered. They enter here and they got burned. And they also did experimentations on the bodies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some real tough imagery here
Right.
that I'm sure she didn't like reliving as she was painting, but it was something she felt really strongly that she wanted to communicate.
Today, collectors seek Erna Rosenstein's work for more than its artistic importance. They see it as a rare witness to the 20th century, told through the eyes of someone who lived it. That was exactly why the expert had no hesitation when it came time to reveal the estimate.
If this were to come up to auction today, we would estimate this painting at $50,000 to $70,000.
Wow, thank you.
The painting was valued at $50,000 to $70,000. But this time, the silence in the room wasn't caused by the price alone. It came from the realization that every brushstroke preserved a piece of history. Sometimes, the greatest value of a painting isn't measured by the market. It's measured by the story it continues to tell, even decades after it was created. And if this painting was born from survival and remembrance, the next one tells a very different story, one inspired by the breathtaking landscapes of Alaska, where winter skies and the northern lights shape the vision of one of the state's most celebrated artists. If you spotted an old mold-covered table sitting at a garage sale, how much would you be willing to pay for it? Most people would probably walk right past it. But in the early 1990s, a school teacher named Claire saw something different. The small table sitting out in the yard was old, dirty, and wobbly. The person with her even advised her not to buy it. But Claire decided to take it home anyway.
When I saw this out in the yard, I thought, this is a great thing. It was pitch black, it was a moldy mess, and the lady was asking $30, so $30. I said, but I only have 25. I said, that's all I have. She said, you can have it for 25, and I took it.
For years, it was simply another piece of furniture in the family home. That changed when Claire brought it to Antiques Roadshow. Almost immediately, the experts realized they were looking at something that very few people ever get the chance to see in person.
What we brought in today here is a Federal inlaid mahogany demi-lune card table made by John and Thomas Seymour, very distinguished cabinet makers who made some of the most distinguished and fine furniture for the very wealthiest families in Boston at the time.
John and Thomas Seymour were among the most celebrated furniture makers in Federal-era America. Their work is already exceptionally rare, but this table still retains something even more valuable. Its original maker's label, a tiny detail that left the experts stunned.
There it was, John Seymour and Son, Creek Square, Boston. And that's all we needed to see. Oh my God, we just looked at each other, we just couldn't believe it.
That small label transformed a garage sale purchase into a museum-worthy treasure. What makes the story even more remarkable is that Claire had nearly reduced its value herself while trying to clean it. Fortunately, she stopped before doing any serious damage.
If you had cleaned it a lot more, you would have taken a lot off the value.
One of the greatest pieces of federal furniture I've ever seen.
Then came the appraisal. Claire guessed the table might be worth around $20,000. An incredible number for something she bought for just $25. But the experts simply smiled.
I think Les and I both feel that this piece in the open marketplace on a good day would be in the range of about $200,000 to $225,000.
Wow.
Okay? Now, $25,000.
The room nearly exploded, but the biggest surprise was still ahead. After the show, the table was sent to Sotheby's. The bidding quickly climbed far beyond expectations. And finally,
sold for $490,000. Thank you all.
After buyers' premiums were added, the final value exceeded $541,000. From a mold-covered table purchased for $25 to more than $500,000. This wasn't just a shocking appraisal. It became one of the most extraordinary garage sale success stories in Antiques Roadshow history. And finally, we've arrived at number 1. The necklace that stands above every other piece in today's countdown. The most valuable, the most spectacular, and perhaps the most unforgettable jewelry treasure featured in this entire video. What's fascinating is that this story doesn't begin with a famous collector or a headline-making auction. It begins with a name that occupies a unique place in British history, Lady Astor.
The thing about Lady Astor was she was an extraordinary woman.
This remarkable necklace was presented to the city of Plymouth for successive Lady Mayoresses to wear on important civic occasions. From the very beginning, it was never just a piece of jewelry. It was part of a larger story. a symbol of status, tradition, and history passed from one generation to the next.
Everything, but rarely do I get presented with something that is quite so spectacular as this diamond necklace. It's not just a diamond necklace, it's like a diamond skipping rope. It's huge!
And once the necklace was laid out for examination, it became easy to understand the expert's excitement. Nearly 4 feet long, set with diamonds, sapphires, and platinum, and designed with extraordinary versatility.
It breaks down into no less than 6 separate components.
But precious materials alone don't explain why this piece reached the top of today's ranking. What truly separates it from almost everything else is its provenance, its documented ownership, its historical significance, and its direct connection to one of Britain's most famous women.
You have absolutely cast factual provenance for this piece, and if a piece of jewellery like this came up for auction, the international interest for it would be universal.
That's exactly the combination auction houses dream about. And then came the biggest valuation of the entire countdown.
I think it would sell for probably at least £300,000 to £400,000, at least. And I think, bearing in mind that provenance can make a huge difference, this has to be worth for insurance at least £500,000 to £600,000.
An auction value of £300,000 to £400,000, and an insurance valuation reaching as high as £600,000, a figure large enough to leave almost anyone speechless. Yet the expert still had one final observation.
It is well above the most expensive and important piece of jewellery that I've ever had to film on the Antiques Roadshow, and I'm a very lucky man to have seen it.
That statement alone explains why this necklace claims the #1 spot. From amber necklaces preserving ancient life to dazzling Art Deco masterpieces covered in diamonds, we've seen some incredible treasures today. But this necklace stands above them all. So, do you agree with our picks? Lynn Drexler oil paintings. Can 2 paintings that spent decades hanging quietly in a family home really be worth more than $500,000? For years, they were appreciated simply as beautiful keepsakes with sentimental value. No one imagined they would one day become part of one of the most astonishing appraisals ever featured on Antiques Roadshow. But when Lynn Drexler's market suddenly took off, everything changed overnight.
Lynn wound up leaving a number of pieces with my aunt, and when my aunt passed in 2009, I inherited them. And so I've always loved them. About 1.5 years ago, I saw a New York Times article that talked about Lynn Drexler and how this artist, who had been in obscurity for decades, was all of a sudden getting interest. So I thought I would bring these and see if I could learn more about them.
The story didn't begin with a famous auction or an expensive purchase. It began with a friendship. The guest great-aunt was an artist who knew Lynn Drexler through the abstract expressionist community, and over the years, these paintings simply remained with the family. After Drexler passed away, her work received very little attention, and for decades, few collectors paid much notice to her paintings. Then the market shifted. Major exhibitions, museum interest, and strong auction results suddenly pushed Lynn Drexler into the spotlight. Collectors who had overlooked her work for years were now eager to own it, and the paintings hanging in this family's home suddenly became highly desirable works of art.
The works from the 50s and the early 60s are the most desirable. These are small and medium-sized paintings for her. The market has really shifted in the last few years. There have been a couple of major galleries in New York and in London and overseas that have done major shows, and so they've started moving into major collections, and they've also done very well at auction.
Both paintings were created during the late 1950s and early 1960s, the period collectors now consider the strongest of Drexler's career. As museums and major private collections competed for her work, prices rose dramatically. But even that couldn't prepare the owner for what came next.
If the smaller painting were to come to auction, I believe that value would be $50,000 to $70,000.
Wow. Wow.
The smaller painting alone carried an auction estimate of $50,000 to $70,000. An incredible figure. Yet the biggest surprise was still to come.
And the larger painting, I believe if this painting were at auction, it would sell for between $300,000 and $500,000.
Oh my goodness. I'm speechless. Wow. I mean, I've always just liked them, but I would never have imagined.
What began as a pair of paintings passed between artist friends had quietly remained in one family's home for decades before the art world finally recognized just how extraordinary they really were.